Hi, sociologists. This is another lesson in social institutions, macro scale social institutions, and also how they affect our micro scale mindset, our daily life experiences, the norms on the macro scale in our society, and that kind of thing. So this is another social institution. Religion is the topic today. And religion shares a chapter in your textbook with another social institution, but the corresponding reading assignment for this lecture and the series of lectures where we will discuss religion and its connection with other components of culture, the corresponding reading assignment will be that half of the chapter that covers religion. So, religion is a social institution, as I have on the board up here, and I remember early on in the semester, really briefly, when we were talking about what social institutions are in general. They are macro scale parts of the social structure that provide a framework, help to provide a framework for daily life. They ensure that all of the needs of society on the macro scale are taken care of over time, so society can continue over time with a standard set of norms and social facts, etc. So back when we first started talking about what social institutions are, I rattled off a list like family and education system and government and religion I mentioned. And one student stayed after class or emailed me after class and said, how on earth, is religion social institution? Because, at that time in the semester, we weren't thinking on the macro scale very much yet. We were thinking of religion as being something that happens inside the big doors at Geyer Springs Baptist Church down the interstate from us here, but maybe not something that is a blanket that covers all of the other social institutions in society. Some of the reaction papers that you had turned in about family used biblical references so that you gave evidence in your reaction papers that macro scale ideas fostered in Christianity can affect micro scale ideas that individuals possess about what marriage and what family means. So, yes, religion is a social institution, and we're not going to talk about Christianity specifically in this particular lesson, because just like in the lessons where we learned about family and its sociological definition and marriage and its sociological definition, we have to look at religion from the sociological perspective. So we don't define it as a belief in God, but we do define it as a set of beliefs that have to do with otherworldly things. So things that we don't have control of in this life, we don't have answers for, that kind of stuff. So let me talk to you about what religion is from the sociological perspective. So, religion is a social institution. Remember, social institutions provide for the needs that the people in a population have over time. And it turns out that human beings need a reason to live. They need meaning in life. And religion, regardless of what religion it is, religion provides a framework for meaning in life for people in a society. It provides answers to unanswerable questions. Science can answer many, many, many questions. Certainly over the millennia, as science has progressed, it's answered more and more questions. For instance, there used to be many, many religions on earth in ancient times that worshipped the sun, because in the minds of the people who lived on earth, they didn't have an answer to what the sun was, why it moved through the sky, or even that it doesn't move through the sky. It's us that's turning, right? So sun worshipers were very common in olden ancient times. But nowadays, when science provides answers for certain things, we leave that to science or the secular world, but there are still questions. Because human beings are very curious animals, there are still questions that science has not been able to answer. For instance, did we exist before we were born? Do we exist after we die? Is there an afterlife? Is there a creator? So some of these questions science can provide an answer that they suppose is correct, and you just have to take their word for it. But on the flip side, religion provides an answer that they suppose, through folklore, through belief, is correct, and you just have to take your word for it. It's called faith. So religions provide answers through faith and belief, whereas science provides answers through empirical evidence. When science cannot provide answers through empirical evidence, it sometimes still tries to answer those questions and just says, because this other thing is true, this is probably true, although we don't have the empirical evidence yet. People try, they will continue to try, and just like nowadays, it might seem crazy to hear that people used to worship the sun, because now we know from astronomy, from science class, in kindergarten, we see the solar system hanging from the ceiling. So now we have science answers about the sun. We don't worship it anymore. Most people don't. So religion is a macro-scale social institution that gives meaning to life for the people who live in a population. It gives answers to otherwise unanswerable questions, acceptable answers to otherwise unanswerable questions. It gives purpose for living, purpose to reach a goal in an afterlife. This gives you motivation to follow society's norms, because religion also gives you guidelines for behavior. And any society, including U.S. society, where we think of religion and state, or religion and government, church and state, being separate from each other, religious ideology gives guidelines for behavior. And when you see these two words in religion as a social institution, you should think of a great big buzzword that we had early on in the semester, a macro scale thing called norms. Remember, there's 3 types of norms: folkways, mores, and laws. Review what those are for the final exam. In general, norms are guidelines for behavior. Remember, we called them social rules. Well, where do they come from? We don't merely invent them from whole cloth. We don't just weave them into existence from imagination. Religion that guides a society is typically the place where norms come from. Okay, so guidelines like folkways, you might say holding a door open for someone or being kind to the elderly or something like this is a folkway, that we're supposed to be kind to people who are lesser than ourselves or something like this. Also, guidelines for morality. Again, we just finished the marriage chapter. Many of you in your reaction papers linked religious belief to how behavior should, watch my air quotes there, should happen in marriage. And so mores, which comes from the word morals or moral, is a type of norm. And then our laws come from what once was a folkway, once was a more. We think it's important enough to write it down and write down the sanction that goes with it. So religion is a social institution because it does all of this for the society where you find it. Now, there are a variety of types of religion. I hope this isn't too small that I have written on the board here, but there are 2 basic categories for religion. Theistic religions. This means that you believe in a god, gods, or no god. Atheism. You do not believe in a god at all. You deny the existence of a supreme being. Monotheism, you believe in one supreme being that controls everything. Polytheism, you believe in a collection of gods that usually have control over certain things, but not one typically that controls all. And so there are many different theistic religions in the world. The main monotheistic religions are Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. Very broadly spread, universalizing religion that is a polytheistic religion is Hinduism, practiced very widely in the world today. And there are some people who will argue, and it's great to argue with this if you have good academic reasons and evidence that you can offer to support your argument. I'm all for it. A polite, educated argument with facts on both sides, carefully considered, is fantastic. However, I have atheism here as a type of religion. Some people will argue that it's not a type of religion, but atheism is a belief that there is no God controlling things. And typically, atheists evangelize, if I can use that word, just as much as other religions, universalizing religions, that is. Universalizing means there is a purpose. They want to spread the religion through the world. It's kind of like one of the tenets of the belief. You should spread the religion to other people. Atheism is really observed most often like a universalizing religion, because people who claim to be atheists or own atheism as their belief system tend to try to convince you of the fallacy of your belief. There's a good word for you to ask Siri what it means. Fallacy. Add that to your college level vocabulary, please. So if you believe in a monotheistic religion and you encounter an atheist and religion comes up, be polite to each other, please. But the atheist will try to convince you, hopefully in a polite way, that you're wrong to believe that God exists. And you will try to convince the atheist, hopefully in a polite way, that they are wrong, that God does exist, and you should have some good reasons why that you can argue back and forth politely. So, theism, or a theistic religion, believes in a god or gods, and whether you are atheistic, monotheistic, or polytheistic, that will affect those different belief patterns, will affect what the norms are in the society where you live. It will affect guidelines for behavior, purpose in life, and understanding of afterlife, if there is an understanding of afterlife. It will, in fact, affect marriage rules. We read about something called polygamy in our last chapter. Polygamy is multiple marriages simultaneously, one spouse of one sex category with multiple spouses of the opposite sex category simultaneously. That's what polygamy means. And in many religions around the world, including the monotheistic religion of Islam, polytheism is sanctioned. It is approved of through the religious guidelines, through the religious belief system. So your norms, the way that you grow up, would include an acceptance of. It would include no special consideration of polygamy, just like you and I don't give a special consideration to monogamy because it's our thing. So it would affect the way you live your life, the way other social institutions are organized, etc. And the etc. we will go into a little more deeply in our next video. There are also religions that are categorized under a word called animism or animistic religions. You might recognize the beginning of this word to look something like the word animal. It's because it's talking about spirits or being able to have living type things, spirit type living things that exist simultaneously with human beings and animals, and that sometimes they control things. Sometimes they're just simply like you and me. So if you think that your life is valuable and you're an animistic, you follow some animistic religion, then probably you will also assume or understand or have faith that the trees, the flowers, the fish, etc., the birds of the sky, have spirits also that must be respected equally to your own life. And so animistic religions do not look to a supreme God or a supreme being of any sort, God or goddess. They look to spirits in the spirit world, ancestors, and ancestor honor or worship is part of animistic religions very often. So these are the types of religions that exist, the major categories. You can read more about the 7 most common religions in the world in our textbook and how society varies. There will be some brief examples in our textbook about how society on the macro scale varies with its norms and traditions and customs and ideas. based on the type of religion that's found in that particular society. So really, really interesting topic. I love teaching religious studies. Haven't done it in a long time, but hey, I'm game. So anyway, text me with questions, and there will be much more about the connection between religion and the other social institutions that we're studying this semester, because this is good stuff, y'all. It really gets our brains working. So I look forward to hearing from you. Bye.